We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football, I like football season, and all the things that go with
it. Welcome into the PFF NFL Podcast. Steve Palazzolo here by myself for at least a few seconds because Sam Monson will be joining us. It's really minor league Steve. Sam is dressed up as minor league Steve. Let's bring him in. Let's go and get him. If you're watching here on YouTube, just get ready. I think it's going to be a treat. I hear people cackling in the... So here comes Sam, minor league Steve is here. That's actually an incredible representation. If you're listening on our... wherever you're listening to podcasts, I guarantee you're going to want to
all right, I'm ready to
see
baseball.
the YouTube. You're ready to baseball. Look at this. Look at your accessories. You didn't want the Oakleys?
Oh, I didn't even see those.
The Oakleys are over there, too. We could have somebody get those for you. You got a bat.
All right.
You've got Steve's glove. Ooh. Yeah, you got to wear the glove the whole show? Is that
yeah, but I'm going to take this thing off because A, it's really hot, and B, it's the size
jersey?
of a tent.
You didn't wear the turtlenecs?
No.
The Mariners turtlenecks?
No. I figured it would be funny that if you just saw like the neckline plunge down to the midriff somewhere.
That's great.
Yeah, give me a second.
Which pants did we have there? The Brewers pants.
So it took me a second to realize that the pants are not supposed to be like trouser length. You know, they're supposed to be knee length. Because when I put them on, they were like regular pants. I was like, yeah. These aren't that bad at all.
Pull them up. Yeah, you pull them up.
And then I just realized
I never had pants that actually fit me lengthwise. Believe it or not.
Yeah. I do believe that. So when I put them on, I was like, these kind of fit okay. And then I was like, hang on, that shouldn't be right. There's no way Steve's pants should be fitting. Oh yeah, they're supposed to go to the knee.
No, they really are supposed to fit. But I was just, they couldn't find stuff. For me. That's
you like that? You like the hair?
The hair is incredible,
right?
That's the jock wig that you found?
The jock wig, yeah. I didn't expect to find, a wig that wasn't going to take some serious modification, but it turns out all you need is a standard jock.
We need we're going to need a minor league coach in here to inspect your facial hair. There is no facial hair allowed below the lip.
It's clearly a little bit, it's stretching the rules.
Yeah.
But I don't have the best cheek coverage in the world, so I figured for the joke, I would be better off pushing the boundaries and, waiting for somebody to come and call me on it, rather than, too far up here and ruin the gig.
Oh, this is fantastic. What are we talking? We're going to talk some NFL at some point here.
But that's the podcast.
This is great.
By the way, these shoes, these are ridiculous. Like these things, they're clown feet.
Size 16.
Only 16?
16s.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I could cleats, probably put these on with my shoes inside them.
Cleats are a little worn, but all black. I always went with the all black.
Yeah.
Cleats, yeah.
Well, you're an old school guy.
Yeah.
Right, you're not flashy.
You got the Barry Zito stirrup socks there. You got my Milwaukee Brewers pants.
Yeah.
Big league pants.
Right.
Giants jacket. Yeah. It looks like you got the Nashua Pride jersey on underneath.
Sure.
And you neglected the Mariners turtleneck that I offered.
Dude, unless you...
I told you to turn it down in here.
Somebody did turn it down, but it's still way too hot for a turtleneck.
From the side, it kind of like, yeah, this is weird. What if I had a twin?
Like the Danny DeVito twin from Twins, or you get all the Arnie genetic stuff. You're 9 foot tall and 300 pounds and minor league baseball career, and this was the genetic stuff that got left over.
This is great. Me. And then you've got the Father's Day prostate cancer
Oh, that's what
wristbands.
These are. I see. Yeah,
they would always give us some blue wristbands for prostate cancer.
Okay.
And I see you're rocking the C243.
Of course. Yeah.
Is that always your?
Yeah,
is
it's
that
my
your
weapon
bat
of choice.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, smart. I think my AAA hit did come with a 243. C243. That was mine.
That looks a lot more used than I would think you owning a baseball bat would be.
It wasn't mine. This is what you chose. I gave you an option. You could have
No,
had
it was fine. I mean, well, look, it was worn in. I don't want a new one. I mean,
I had a maple and I had a another black ash bat, but you chose this ash. It's a good one. It's got 9 grains. It's really good. Fewer the grains, the better.
What are the grains?
The grains of wood. So you count the lines there. That's how many grains it takes to make the bat, and the less you have, the more likely it is to not break, to stay strong.
Okay.
Like Ichiro had like a 4-grain bat one time from Mizuno. Huh. All right, so this is great. It's Minor League Steve is here, and we're going to talk some NFL.
Yeah. Let's go.
I got your coffee for you.
Thank you.
You're all ready to go?
Yeah, I wasn't going into a shop looking like this. I mean, even without the baseball stuff, just the facial
We'll have to
hair.
go out after.
Just the facial
Let's go get
hair
lunch. Lunch on me.
Only if I can wear the wig.
Oh, definitely the wig.
Yeah.
Nobody would ever know. You might need a couple more shows of that.
So I was upstairs in the office, the main office, waiting for you to bring all the crap in and throw it in a room somewhere. And, a few of the people, the non-podcast listening members of PFF, disgraceful that there are some, but they exist upstairs, obviously had no idea what was happening. And I'm sitting there with this facial hair and this wig on. And one of them kind of walks out of the room in front of me, obviously clocks, and gives it this look of, what in God's name is that person doing sitting there looking like that? And, me just found it more funny.
They don't know you. They don't know.
And of course, I found it funnier to just let them, think that I would voluntarily rock this as like a life choice.
That's what I do too.
I mean, look, this isn't a million miles divorced from how Austin Gale rocks into the office on a daily basis.
It's true. It is true. You got some. It's like you are a combination of me and Austin all in one.
Yes.
So yeah, you're looking good. I'm going to get a couple pictures here as we're going.
Oh, great.
Let's talk some NFL.
Okay.
I apologize for the Monday podcast, which became outdated pretty quickly once Aaron Rodgers showed up for camp.
Yeah, I'm taking L's all over the shop this week. We've got this, right?
That's a win. Oh, explain. Why are we doing this again?
Why are we doing what?
Why are you dressed up like Minor League Steve? Explain to the people. I meant to mention
we raise
that
money for charity. We raised, as of right now, $1,615 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, the Tri-State Make-A-Wish Foundation. This is what we're doing on the PFF NFL podcast these days. We raised the first sum of money. It was you rocking the afro. That was the Fro Show. And then we've raised this amount for the Make-A-Wish. This is me dressing as Minor League Steve. Now it's your turn again. The next
wig
one
is really perfect, though.
Yeah, it's good.
It's like
the next one will be your forfeit again. But we're going to start raising money. We'll do one of these drives. We'll raise money. We'll hit a goal. We'll do the forfeit, and then we'll start all over again. Ideally, with the other person having to suffer through the indignity of whatever it is we decide.
So I'm next.
Yeah.
For whatever the
you're next.
indignity is.
We will we'll wait until this podcast goes up. Maybe we'll get some last-minute donations. Head to my Twitter, PFF_Sam. It's the pinned tweet. If you still want to give money, there's still a bit of time. Then we'll wrap this one up. We'll set up a new GoFundMe, and we'll raise some more money.
All right. This is awesome. And like I said, if you're listening from a podcast standpoint, I know it's not great to just hear it. So go check it out on YouTube, the PFF NFL Podcast, because it's worth seeing what I looked like about 10 years ago in the minor leagues.
After being ill for an extended period of time.
After losing
4 X's.
Losing some weight and everything.
Yeah.
So NFL stuff here.
Yeah, so as I was saying, taking L's all over the place, dressing like this. Ireland lost to the USA in the Olympic Sevens rugby. Very close game, but we lost. Bit of a bad week for Ireland.
This is a rough week for you, huh?
Now, look, this is only 7, so don't get too excited. The last time we played in 15s, you got waxed by like 50 points, but not the point. Bad week. And then everything I ever said about the Aaron Rodgers situation was wrong.
Yeah.
Everything. Start to finish. Nothing right. None of it. So if you listen to anything I said about Rodgers and the Packers in the last couple of months since this broke, I apologize.
Go listen to those episodes. Go back and listen.
Rodgers is back. He returned to training camp, arrived at training camp, I guess, then gave a 30-minute press conference, which I thought was really fascinating. The upshot of this is he didn't get anything out of them. There was no concession. He just came back to work. Now, you can say, all right, there was nothing there all along. This was all a figment of off-season needing to fill content, all this kind of stuff. But the 30-minute press conference was really interesting because he did not hold back in a way quarterbacks typically do. He basically put it all out there, exactly what he thinks, exactly what he's upset about. And there were varying degrees, I think, of how reasonable it was. So his main point was, look, he just wants to be involved in the conversation. And this was similar to what we've heard before.
That's what
Russell.
You were right about, at least.
Yeah, that's true. With Russell Wilson and, Tom Brady's been part of this. And he made that point in his press conference that, hey, look, I'm not asking for anything that other great quarterbacks don't already have as part of their standard operating procedure. I just want to be involved in conversations about things that are going to affect my job, right? And we've actually got a clip of that to play on the podcast where a guy kind of challenges him on it and says, hey, look, you mentioned all these players that you wanted to have an input in. You would have been wrong about most of those. Like, these guys either didn't live up to the contract, didn't justify what you would have wanted to do with them. So why should you be part of this conversation, essentially? And he had a really interesting take on that. We'll play the clip for you right now and then give you a little bit of a reaction.
When it comes to personnel stuff, it's not all personnel stuff that I'm talking about. I just want to be involved in conversations that affect my ability to do my job. And it's not all personnel. But I think I have a unique perspective being in a locker room and having been the starter here for 13 years and being here for 16 years. There's not many people who've been in a position of influence longer than I have in this building. So it gives me a unique perspective to shed light on how things work together. One of the most important things is chemistry and cohesion in an organization, and I think I can offer an interesting perspective. It's not where I need to have final say on anything. I never asked for that. I just want to be in a conversation.
So what I found really interesting there is he stressed the point that, look, he doesn't want final say on this. He just wants in the conversation. And as a quarterback that's been there in the building essentially longer than anybody else, as a quarterback who's been playing at this level for that incredible period of time, it does make sense that Rodgers would have a perspective that is useful within that conversation, right? So whoever else is involved there, Gutekunst, scouts, coaches, like whoever is in that conversation, it does feel like there's something Aaron Rodgers can bring to that topic that isn't necessarily covered.
I do start laughing every time I
right.
Look at
this is like the Fro show in reverse.
Which moves were being referred to there? What did he want?
He was talking about, well, this is where he doesn't help himself, right? So he referenced kind of some old guys that they let go: Julius Peppers, Charles Woodson, Jordy Nelson, might have been with James Jones.
Yeah, those were all the right moves. Absolutely.
This was the point this guy was making.
They were old.
But he also was saying, look, part of it was I didn't agree with letting them go. Part of it was I didn't agree with how they were treated on their way out the door. And this is, again, like this idea of just let them know. Like, if you're going to draft his replacement, give him a heads up, right? It's not that unreasonable to just try and stop him getting pissed off with this stuff. And same, like, if these guys are going to be moved on from, it can't be that hard to smooth the way on as they leave, right? Particularly like a guy like Charles Woodson, who'd been this great player for them, defensive player of the year in 2009. How hard is it to just be like, hey, Charles, we love what you've done for us. We really respect it. We think it's time to move on. What can we do to sort of smooth the transition? So he made that point, but then he was also like, and last year they let go the second best guy in training camp, Jake Kumerow. And you're like, oh, come on. Like, Rodgers, that's not helping. Whatever point you're trying to make, it's going to get lost if you bring up Jake Kumerow.
I stand with the front office there. The how they treat people thing, I can't speak to that, right?
Right. But it's an unknown, but it's something he keeps coming back to.
The decisions, I get it. As a former player, you could tell, I was a former player.
Well, as a former player.
You also as a former player. I will say, as a player, I think players overrate things like training camp. In our case, in baseball, is spring training and all that stuff.
Which is why I think it's fair that, look, he doesn't, again, he's not saying he wants final say. He just wants to pitch his take. So when they're making cut down day or whatever, and they're like, hey, we're keeping 5 receivers. Like, Rodgers obviously wanted to keep Kumerow. At least let him make the case, right? Like, have it out and then say, thanks for your input, Aaron. We're going to dump Kumerow because he sucks, regardless of your take in training camp. Thanks. But the dude just wants to be heard. He just doesn't want to come into work one day and find out that you already cut him without telling him anything.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, Look, they landed where they are, which is with a roster, I think, that is still so dependent on Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
And I don't know if GM Aaron Rodgers solves any of that. GM Aaron Rodgers just traded for Randall Cobb, even though they just drafted a Randall Cobb clone and Amari Rodgers in the draft.
Gutekunst is coming out like firing as well. Like he's coming out saying, yeah, we traded him because Rodgers wanted him. Like this is his move, essentially. Let's see how it works, basically. Like those two, whatever about the various degrees of how this may have been over-reported over the last couple of months, the fact that he clearly hates the GM, I think is pretty evident from the comments he was making.
Well, I mean, if you're Gutekunst too, wouldn't you just you want Mad Aaron Rodgers, right? You want Mad Aaron.
Oh, you think this is a masterstroke?
Yeah, stir it up, stir the pot a little bit.
Wow,
don't you think?
I mean, maybe. Well, it certainly worked last year, right? Piss him off, let him go. The other thing that was interesting to me is he was saying, like, why not leverage me as a recruiting tool in free agency? And he said the draft as well, which is possibly not the most helpful thing in the world. But I'm kind of amazed that wasn't something they were doing anyway. Like Tom Brady is clearly a part of the recruiting, or at least a retention effort in Tampa Bay. Why would you not be using Rodgers as like a recruiting tool? Okay, Green Bay isn't a big spender in free agency anyway, so it's not like they're sending him out there to woo, Joe Tooney in free agency with the monster contract. But like, whoever it is you do want, why would you not have Rodgers pick up the phone and say, "Hey, come win a championship"?
It's not like Brady's out there on the two guys that he knew that the Bucs brought in, Rob Gronkowski and Antonio Brown.
Yes, both of whom he lobbied for.
Yeah, but is it like Gronk has been saying for years, like, I only want to play with Tom. Like Gronk left, but even left Tom, he left pretty much because he didn't want to play for Belichick anymore.
But if the Bucs
went to WWE, my point with Gronk is he's already attached to Brady. He was going to Brady. I don't know if Brady's like calling him all the time.
But if the Bucs wanted somebody, Brady would be on the phone.
Probably.
Yeah. So and I think that's true for basically any other. Like, shoot, Derek Carr's been out there lobbying for Devontae Adams in a trade. He's not even available, right?
At the same time,
happens as standard. Why are you not involving Aaron Rodgers in that conversation?
At the same time,
particularly when he wants to be.
Tom Brady sat there in New England the whole time and had no say in anything. He was the opposite.
But do you think he was involved in when they wanted to get a player? Let's have Tom talk to him.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe a little bit, but right. I mean, so everything that everything that quarterbacks are supposedly fighting for, which is like personnel input and all that stuff, Tom Brady had zero in New England. He did not have personnel input. In fact, that was one of the reasons why he did want to leave, and maybe that's Rodgers' point, is by the end, the Patriots had a depleted offensive roster. They never really – they made a few moves for top-end receivers like a Randy Moss. They stumbled into a Gronk, good pick there. But it's not like they went all out. They got a Brandon Cooks. They made a few moves for receivers through the years, but it's not like they attacked it the same way like Peyton Manning's Colts did or whatever it might be. So Brady kind of sat there and just sucked it up with not great weapons for many years and different things like that.
But I guarantee that if they wanted somebody in the building, like they would be asking Brady to have a conversation with that guy. Yeah. And I don't understand why you wouldn't do that as just a matter of course, a standard operating procedure, particularly when the guy is saying he wants to do that. Like he's literally offering his services to you as a recruiting tool, and you're saying, "Nah, you're all right. Don't worry, we got it under control. Just sit tight, Aaron. Come back in July and see how we did."
Players play front offices. That's what happens. That's what you do.
Front offices.
All right, we've got a lot to talk about on the show. The athletics, quarterback tiers. I like a good tiered system, Sam. You know that.
They did their quarterback tiers just like you would have done. Cowardly tiers.
Before we get into it, though, got to give a shout-out to our friends over at Fantrax. Fantrax is NFL Fantasy Football League Manager, is the most customizable, easy-to-use, and feature-rich platform in the entire industry. PFF is gearing up to play our leagues on Fantrax this season. I already do, Sam. Multi-team trades, player salary and contract options, bonus points for touchdowns of different yardage, projected player rankings based off your league's custom scoring, and you can auto-generate player salaries for your league. And whichever league you're in, you can customize it exactly the way you want. If you're coming from another site, not a problem. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues. So sign up and play now at fantrax.com/PFF and actually get a chance to win an autographed jersey from the great Josh Allen. I need a Josh Allen jersey because that might be our next little fun game here. It's fantrax.com/PFF, the home of fantasy sports.
By the way, one more thing that the Rodgers things might have in terms of an impact is it's got to make it easier to keep Devontae Adams. Like,
but it's a
one
year.
Thing.
Like,
sure,
it's literally just a year of Aaron Rodgers,
right? And maybe that's how it works. Is they just go back for the last dance, with the Instagram posts, and then they're both out of here. On the other hand, it's a lot easier, I think, to have those conversations of, hey, look, the new Hopkins deal is a little bit screwy. We don't want to go there. Stay here. Rodgers is here. You'll look like a superstar again, and get your money.
Where do you want to go next year? Do you want to go The Athletic?
We could go. Let's talk about the Colts thing.
Okay, let's talk offensive linemen.
That's interesting. Braden Smith signs a deal. Not quite the highest paid right tackle in the NFL, but right there with them. The two guys that signed earlier this offseason, Ryan Ramczyk, Taylor Mouton. Braden Smith's right up there. So now the Colts have made Ryan Kelly the highest paid center in the NFL since overtaken by Ragnow. Braden Smith right up there with the highest paid right tackles in the NFL. And Quentin Nelson's contract is on the horizon, which presumably will reset the market for guard contracts in the NFL. The Colts are going to have about 700% of their cap tied up in their offensive line.
Yeah, it's going to be 3 big contracts, and then the question's going to be
and they're going to be paying Darius Leonard.
Well, I'm just saying 3 big contracts on the offensive line out of 5 players, right? So Eric Fisher's on a 1-year deal, right, or is it 2 years? They're not locked up. Eric Fisher's not locked up long term,
right?
And then Mark Lewinsky's the right guard. It's an interesting strategy because we always talk about we've always said creep back toward average.
1 year for Fisher.
1 year for Fisher. So next year at this time, the Colts are still going to be looking for a left tackle, and we're probably going to be mock drafting them a left tackle, throughout the year, right? But they don't even have. They probably won't have a first round pick. So I'll probably be saying trade for Ali Villanueva because that's the only answer.
Yeah.
But when you have 3 guys on a massive contracts, it would be Quentin Nelson, as you said, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith. Are you going to take a hit on those other positions? Do you have to, build through the draft? And we use the term creep back toward average for the offensive line. Our analytics friends will say it's a weak link system. Just you're only as strong as your weakest link. Is it a good strategy to pay top end money for 3/5 of your line, knowing that the last 2 could be iffy year to year? You can't necessarily lock those guys up. If Eric Fisher comes back and plays the same way he did in Kansas City, they're not going to they can't give him a Braden Smith type of contract.
Right.
The one thing I will say, though, kudos to the NFL for paying right tackles. For guys like Braden Smith and other right tackles getting left tackle money, getting high end money. They've come around. I think it did start years ago for a lot of teams, but they've come around to saying, okay, we need it. I mean, everybody watches the games every week. You need your right tackle to be as good as your left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Renner made the point on Twitter that the deal Braden Smith got is $2 million a year, I think more than Joe Thuney, who was the big free agent, on the open market, essentially the guy that's supposed to set the monster contract. So if you are a short-armed offensive tackle like Braden Smith, who people are saying maybe needs to kick inside to guard at the next level, you should be fighting that with every fiber of your being, because if you pan out at both spots, you get at least $2 million a year more playing on the outside than you do playing inside, even at right tackle, not left tackle.
Braden's it's a unique case, right? Because in football there are common position switches, right? And you usually go from a high value position to a lower value position, theoretically, right? You're a corner, you lose a step, you move to safety. Right, you're a college safety, but you're too small. It's not a value thing, but you move up to linebacker, right? So there are common moves in football. This is a college guard, is what Braden Smith was. A very good college guard in the SEC. Guards almost never move to tackle. It's just not a common move.
Well, maybe people should be thinking that way rather than the other way.
Yes. So the again, because it's a baseball show here, Sam. There's baseball has the same thing, right? You draft a whole bunch of shortstops and then you move them to lower. Yeah, there you go. Grab your slugger. Let me see your stance. What's your batting stance?
Do you think this is like? I'm wondering if it's like A Few Good Men. I think better with my bat. That was Tom Cruise's line in that. So I'm just gonna just keep the bat here the whole time. See if I think better.
You'll have some good takes here. Yeah. So in baseball, you get a bunch of shortstops and then you move them to second. You move a guy to third. You move them to the outfield. Right. That's how you do it. In football, you see tackles move to guard all the time. But we've talked about this a lot too. If you have anybody that has any chance to be a good tackle, do you just always train them at tackle first. And then they fall back to guard. I know they're different positions and you don't want to lose development time and all that stuff, but just always try to steal a free tackle, so to speak. And that's what the Colts did. They drafted a guard, put him at tackle, and he's one of the league's best.
It's interesting because it benefits both sides at this point. Like if you can steal a tackle from a guy that most people thought was a guard, it's great value. And it's a more important position. It's more valuable than the guy who's a fantastic guard, unless the guard you get is Quentin Nelson. But it also benefits the player. Like if the player succeeds at tackle, he's going to make more money than if he succeeds at guard. So at this point, both sides are incentivized to make that the standard rather than the reverse, which is the way it's always been. It's one of those, points that, I mean, if you go listen to Chris Collinsworth's podcast this week, Neil Hornsby, the founder of PFF, is on it. There's sort of interesting deep dive into the history of PFF, but they also talk about those things of, what did you think was the case for years in football, and then just the data and the information has sort of proved to you were just wrong. That's one of those things. For years, everybody in the NFL has been thinking you take these tackles and you kick them inside the guard and you win. But both sides of that equation now are pointing to start working the other direction, which hasn't really happened a lot yet, but here's an example of it working.
I will say, though, even using PFF WAR, wins above replacement, there is an argument for if you have an elite guard.
Right, the Quentin Nelson.
Right, and that's the Quentin Nelson thing. So if you know, there's always that tipping point, right, where it's like most of the data would tell you tackle over guard, but if you're getting a Quentin Nelson, if you're getting a Zach Martin, there is an argument for keeping them at guard.
Yep.
In general. So it's an interesting breakdown for the Colts, and I'll repeat myself for the millionth time. All this offensive line investment, and my biggest concern is still on the perimeter when it comes to the Colts. In their depth chart, just again, it's some solid players. T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, Zach Pascal. Those are the receivers, right? They've taken some shots on some other, like low round draft picks who've got some freak talent and whatever. Mo Alley Cox had a really good year at tight ends. Jack Doyle's a possession tight end. It's a whole bunch of middle tier type of players, and that adds up to probably a bottom 10 group of playmakers.
I just think it's a really interesting strategy because, anytime you get a team doing something extreme, it's always interesting to see how it pans out, right? Just somebody that deviates from the norm, it's fascinating to watch it. And right now, the Colts have what is widely regarded as a very smart group of people running the organization. And what's really interesting is that smart group of people have determined that what they should be doing is spending a truckload of money on the offensive line. And we've seen this before, kind of. Like the Raiders a few years ago built their offensive line through free agency and, proven established players, not the draft, which is the way most people try and do it. The Cowboys did one, then the other. They drafted a bunch of first-round guys and then ended up paying them and keeping them around. So it's definitely doable, but most teams don't want to commit that kind of money to their offensive line. Now, a lot of times you can't because there's only so much money to go around, and typically you've invested the biggest bulk in it in quarterbacks and receivers already, so you just don't have the money to pay the guard that's coming along. The Colts were in a position where they did because they rebuilt this thing almost from the ground up. They had the most cap space in the NFL for a time, so they actually had the money to prioritize their own players and re-signing these guys and take on a Carson Wentz type of contract. But I'm just madly fascinated now that since Andrew Luck retired, they have massively dedicated themselves, committed themselves to securing a really good offensive line to protect whoever the quarterback is. Phillip Rivers comes in last year, great offensive line in front of him. Carson Wentz comes in this year, ensuring a really good offensive line in front of him. But until you find the quarterback, is it going to matter?
I think the Colts, we talk about the Colts a lot for a team that I think is small market, right? That they're not the one that the fan bases are most interested in. They are local. But it's because they do a lot of things that are, I think, on the extremes, right? Their defense wasn't great on paper a couple years ago, but they played a ton of zone and kind of hid their corners a little bit, elevated their ability to play, took a guy like Xavier Rhodes and just last year put him in a zone-heavy system and kind of got him back on track. Renner always talks about they have a type defensively, like give me the long, athletic guys, even if they're not the most productive players in college. We're gonna compress passing lanes and throw Darius Leonard in the middle and Bobby Okereke and all these similar type linebackers and see what sticks there. You've got the offensive line investment and not a lot of receiver investment. I know they drafted Paris Campbell and high and Michael Pittman high. So maybe it's not fair to say they didn't invest there. I just have
but they've done it.
Continue to invest.
Yeah, they've done it through the draft and sort of specifically steered away from the big money free agent stuff.
Right.
Because obviously investment isn't just a one direction thing or a one avenue thing. You can invest in free agency, you can invest through trade, and you can invest through the draft. They have invested heavily in both the draft. They've done it kind of like Dallas with the draft. They invested heavily in the draft, and now they're paying all those offensive linemen. For receivers, it's only been the draft so far, and it hasn't actually yielded that much success to date.
That's also but the old school approach, which was, and this is what the Packers did for years and the Steelers did for years, which is draft, and when you hit on a player, just lock him up. Just lock up your own players. And it does mitigate some risk. There's some risk in free agency moving a guy from a different team to your team, not knowing how he's going to handle your system and your culture and all that stuff. But it's just lock up your guys. And it does seem like that is the Colts strategy. All that said, the biggest move that they made was getting Carson Wentz going somewhere else.
It's really interesting because at some point you're going to
is the bat helping?
Yeah, definitely.
That's good.
You're going to have all this money tied up in the offensive line. But the really sort of dangerous thing is that might not actually make it a great offensive line. Like right now, I think it's our number 2 offensive line on paper heading into the season. But you're right. Like if Eric Fisher doesn't play well coming off his Achilles, you've got a weak link on your weak link unit that has all of the money tied up in it. Like before the Braden Smith contract, they had, I think, the 3rd most money dedicated to their offensive line of any team in the NFL. Add Braden Smith to that, it's probably number 1. Add Quentin Nelson's contract to that, it's going to be number 1 by a mile. And if that happens and you still have a weak link on the offensive line, that's just terrible. At the very minimum, you need to make sure the other 2 spots are okay. Otherwise, the whole investment was like a waste of time.
All right, we're going to get into the Athletic and their quarterback tiers, but a reminder that our friends are back. Support for PFF is brought to you by Manscaped.
Yes.
The best in men's below-the-waist grooming champions of the world. Is that the right sentence? Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. That's right. Mm-hmm. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer. I now have a 2.0, a 3.0, and a 4.0.
Wow.
Over at the house.
Well, you can just watch the evolution in real time.
Yeah. You do ABC analysis,
right?
As I say, see it grow. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. Lost my place here. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code PFF. That's PFF at manscaped.com. Manscaped engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and an incredibly comfortable grooming experience.
You better believe a guy that looks like this.
It looks like you used it on your face.
That's what I'm saying. A guy like this clearly uses Manscaped products.
The 4th-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. That's trademarked. Mm-hmm. So good job by Manscaped. Go check it out. 20% off and free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the promo code PFF. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
Yeah.
They're legit. It's been good. It's been good to grow with Manscaped,
so to speak,
and see them come back. Let's get to the Athletic here. Mike Sando, formerly of ESPN, he's been doing this 8 years now, and it's his biggest project. Mike, friend of the show, so he goes.
He's not a friend of the show. He's a friend of us.
He's just a friend.
Never had him on the show.
Steve and Sam, not a friend of the show. You're right. We could have him on the show to discuss the QB tiers, or we could just do it.
It's a bit late now.
It is a little late. So he goes and he talks to 50 NFL coaches and executives. They cast ballots and they give some analysis on their quarterbacks, and they put them into tiers. And again, the reason why I like the tiered system
is because you're a coward.
Yes, that's part of it.
Yeah.
The other part is, what's the difference between 7 and 9 and 6 and 12?
6 places.
In any given year, it's more realistic analysis to say this guy is in this tier, which gives you this range of outcomes generally. And in any given year, if Aaron Rodgers is the highest graded quarterback, or it's Tom Brady, or it's Patrick Mahomes, you're like, sure, that all makes sense. They're a tier 1 quarterback.
I think if one person is ranking, I don't hate just ranking. I think if you're getting 50 people to vote, you actually get a more sensible breakdown.
You do.
If you get them in tiers, because it's a lot easier to convey to 50 random people, all of whom think differently, and God, can you tell that from the write-ups. It's a lot easier to get them on the same page for like, here's four or five different tiers than it is to try and like get everybody's rankings that make sense the same way. Because there are going to be people that like value, one thing more than anything else, and their rankings are going to look absurd. And when you put that into a, just a 1 to 32 ranking, that guy's ranking essentially gets lost in the shuffle. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. Whereas when you put it in tiers, you can actually end up grouping the players together in a way that makes a lot of sense. Like, I actually think when you look at the tiers here, they're kind of right, pretty much. It's the outlier votes that become fascinating.
Yeah,
it's the guys that rank somebody somewhere completely different, and it didn't really affect the ranking because you're just throwing them in a tier.
The outlier stuff is hilarious because Sando's got the results, and I'm always wondering, out of those 50, how many guys are like, well, tier 1's a starter, just give me a starter, and they're just like, there's 15 tier 1 quarterbacks, or how many are like, no, nobody's a tier 1, it's only Joe Montana, or so. You don't know. They're all working from different standards.
You know what's really awkward with this thing? I think there's been maybe 5 days since I grew the ability to grow facial hair where I haven't had hair here.
Yeah.
Right below the lip. So I keep
cold?
I keep like reflexively doing this, like messing it with my teeth, and it isn't there anymore. So it just feels wrong.
What are you going to do? So you're going to shave the rest of that off?
I'm going to have to, right? There's no way I can like grow it back from here.
I'd keep the Austin style. You dress up like Austin for Monday's show.
I might, there might be another iteration between going from here and clean shaven, but I think it probably has to go down to pretty close to nothing before I can grow it back. But like, even when I was like clean shaven, generally, I don't like calling it a soul patch because that's usually like a thin triangular thing, but just the hair under my lip, it's a different color from the rest of it anyway. So I always just kept it because it was annoying to shave and look weird. But now it feels weird. That's all I'm saying. I don't like being minor league, Steve. It's not a pleasant experience.
It wasn't always for me either. It's good when you're good.
Are we going to scout in here? Can I get drafted?
It's a great look. You've got a good, the bat. It's very.
Yeah,
natural.
I mean, when you pan out here to the full shot, it's quite.
It does look like you're just Ill. 70s ball player showing up.
Right, 70s ball player. It's had like dysentery for a week.
You are closer to what's his face, Eastbound and Down.
Yeah. Well, that's who you get compared to a lot.
Yeah. They thought that I stole his look when he stole mine.
Yes, that's what
Kenny
happened.
Powers.
Anyway, QB tiers.
I don't want to spend another whole show on the Stafford thing, and I don't want to give away all the tiers. It's at
that's
the Athletic.
The Stafford one isn't one of my more. Let's go through the sort of interesting outliers because that, frankly, is the best part of this.
My whole thing on Stafford, though, he tied for 7th with Lamar Jackson overall.
Yeah.
Stafford, my point on Stafford is he's the 10th or 11th best quarterback of his generation.
Which was tier 2.
He's moving up by default.
Sure.
Right? I think the most interesting story about the quarterbacks over the next 3 or 4 years is what tier 2 looks like.
Well,
and who's in there.
They've basically nailed Stafford, right? Tier 2, 38 of the 50 people put him in tier 2.
I think he's tier 3 though.
Whatever. 8
and
people.
I would say that there's a couple tier 1 guys. And then tier 2 is like wide open for the foreseeable future. It could be Josh Allen. He could move up. It could be Lamar. I think Stafford's always been a tier 3 quarterback, a high-end tier 3 quarterback.
I mean, I think tier 2 and 3 are kind of fuzzy. And I think depending on where you draw the line, you could put him in either. I don't have a problem with saying he's a tier 2 caliber quarterback, depending on where that line is drawn, right? Drawing that line where Stafford is a tier 2 quarterback puts a lot of other people in there that people might not think are 2-tier. But whatever. 38 people put him in tier 2. 8 people put him in tier 3, rather. The ones that I have a problem with are the 4 people that thought he was a tier 1 quarterback, because that's just patently absurd, which is the argument we had before. Anybody ranking him 4th is out of their minds. But these are the fun parts. What's interesting as well, so he's got a bunch of quotes from people in here, and you can see the difference. I love the NFL because 32 different teams, 32 different level of competencies, 32 different, and just as organizationally, but also individuals within those organizations. Like Rick Gosselin does these things where he goes back and pulls like scouting reports on, Hall of Famers or whatever. Did one on Gronkowski today. And like GM number 1, whatever, nailed him. Was like Hall of Fame. It was like amazing caliber player, phenomenal first round pick. If he'd come out before this injury, he'd have been a top 12 player in the draft, blah, blah. Like absolutely love Gronk. Had him nailed perfectly. You're like, that guy sounds smart. And then there was like another dude who was just like completely out on him. Didn't think you had talent. Gresham was way better. Was out on him as soon as he heard him talk. Thought he was a goofball. All these kinds of things. You're like, okay, like you had the same information. You just came to the opposite conclusion and you screwed it up. So on this, you can sort of read descriptions of quarterbacks where they absolutely nail them. Like the description of Kirk Cousins in here, I think is phenomenal. In fact, it's worth reading. Give me a second to find it.
Yeah, go get Cousins.
There we go. In the boot game, he's out there quick. In the boot game, he's out there quick and gets his hips around and looks good doing it, one voter said. That's why Kyle Shanahan wanted him and likes him. Contrast that to his in the pocket versus an on-rushing defender. At times, he looks like that equipment intern that you use in the pass rush drill during training camp who can't get out of the way. Like, perfect. That's exactly what Kirk Cousins is. Were you interviewed for this? No, I mean, it wasn't me, but the guy nailed it. But equally then, you go and find other quotes. Like there's a head coach out there who had Ben Roethlisberger as a tier 1 quarterback. Now, look, we can debate where Ben Roethlisberger is right now at this point in his career, given he's another year removed from injury and all blah, 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 right? It's definitely a debatable ranking. But we cannot, we just can't, that starting point can't be tier 1. Like, we can talk about where he is. Does he belong in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4? He does not belong in tier 1. That's just fact. There's just not an argument. You can't debate that. And yet one head coach believes that's where he belongs.
They were 11-0 last year, and he had a lot of touchdowns.
This head coach said their defense got absolutely shredded by Cleveland. Ben completed 47 passes for more than 500 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I can't believe that's a real answer.
So those two people have the same gig, essentially.
For those who forgot what happened in the Pittsburgh-Cleveland game, it wasn't all Big Ben's fault as far as the turnovers go, but Cleveland got up big because there was 900 turnovers in the first half by the Steelers. And then the Browns, and then the Steelers just threw every single down, and Big Ben threw for 500 yards.
He did. He had a PFF grade of 64 in that game.
Yeah, but 500 yards. Sounds legit.
Right. I'm just saying, like, when you read these quotes, essentially there's two people, one of whom completely nailed the description of Kirk Cousins, and the other dude was like, Ben Roethlisberger threw for 500 yards in the playoffs, ergo, he's a tier 1 quarterback still. Those two people have the same level of responsibility.
I think I was talking to Dr. Eric Eager about this recently, and we were talking about a little bit about the difference between an evaluator and a decision maker, right? An evaluator is these 50 people. They've been asked to evaluate. They're not asked to make decisions for this particular exercise. It's just rank the quarterbacks, evaluate them. Where do they rank? You put them in a tier and give us some analysis about them. But to your initial point is a data set of 50 evaluators is really rich. I mean, that's a rich, strong. This is why the big board, the consensus draft board is pretty strong, right? Because you have people from, they're taking it completely different angles. To your point, the extremes kind of get pushed out just a little bit, and the consensus gets pushed to the top from an evaluation standpoint. The key is to have a decision maker who then takes this information, right? So if I was the decision maker here,
of it and makes the call.
And I take this information, first off, the evaluator who said Big Ben's a tier 1 quarterback and all that stuff, he might be unbelievable at evaluating receivers. He might be unbelievable at evaluating other people.
And also, he's a head coach. It specifically says in this one.
And that's fine. I mean, but the decision maker's job here, if I was to make a decision off of this information, which quarterback do I want? Who do I want to sign? Who would I start my franchise with? The decision maker parses through all that stuff. I think what happens with an NFL team, though, when evaluators, and so if you talk to NFL scouts, they're very confident in their scouting ability. I said this all the time at the combine, right? If you have a guy that has any sort of scouting history, he's just going to say, I saw this guy. I knew this guy was a first rounder, even though he went in the 6th. Like, they're just going to tell you all their hits, so to speak. And we do that sometimes too. But I think scouts truly believe the only person who could be a general manager is an evaluator, is a guy that has done it, has been in the trenches, has been at the schools, talking to these kids, who knows these guys inside and out. But the thing we talk about all the time is there's not an evaluator who hits on 90% of his evaluations. It just doesn't exist. If it does, fine, I'll let that guy be my general manager because I don't need other people. But a decision maker the general manager is a manager. And a manager or a CEO takes information and makes the best decision off of that information. And all the evaluators' information are just a piece of the puzzle, and you have to figure out how to put it together.
The Roethlisberger ranking, by the way, is not even the most egregious thing in this article. My favorite one, there is a voter out there who believes that Jimmy Garoppolo is a Tier 1 quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo's own coach doesn't believe that Jimmy Garoppolo is a Tier 1 quarterback.
I'm always trying to get into their head, right? Because did Jared Goff get into Tier 1s?
God, no.
Because I picture that guy saying, well,
Goff, when he had
Super Bowl
5 Tier 2 votes.
He was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago.
He was.
I'm just saying. That's what
like people... His vote essentially breaks down the same way as Jared Goff's, except the one crack-smoking lunatic who thinks he's a Tier 1 quarterback.
I'm actually surprised. So Baker Mayfield, all Tier 2 and Tier 3. I'm actually surprised some people don't still call him like a Tier 4 or 5, a low-end quarterback because he's short or whatever it is. You still hear height bias in a lot of people's analysis, even in some of my friends. They're just some of my friends in the industry who are just like, oh, he's too short. Yeah. Get away from him. I'm just surprised he didn't have some lower, and he ends up right next to Kirk Cousins, which is
kind of fair.
Yeah, Baker and Cousins might be similar.
The interesting ones, you get guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, where the vote is literally all over the place. We've got a Tier 1 vote. We've got 6 Tier 4 votes. Like, his vote is spread out throughout all the whole thing. And then you've got guys like Baker Mayfield, where everybody pretty much agrees, right? He's Tier 2 or 3. And as I said, that I think is the most fluid, like, delineation between the tiers. Depending on where you draw that line between 2 and 3, you can put most quarterbacks in the NFL into those. So it is kind of interesting to me, the guys that are actually consensus pretty close, like everyone pretty much agrees where they are, versus the Jimmy Garoppolos, the Ben Roethlisbergers, the ones where the vote is spread out all over the map.
Daniel Jones got a Tier 2 vote.
Daniel Jones got 1 Tier 2 vote, which feels okay. Yeah, no, that's fair, and 1 Tier 5 vote. Like, people, I think, are hating on Jones too much at this point. Now, it might not. This is one of those things where, old takes exposed gets tagged and I look like a moron because I don't think he's going to have a good year.
How could you possibly look like a moron?
No, there's no way. I mean, look. This is the face of a man who knows what he's talking about. There's simply, he's not going to have a good year. The offensive line is too bad. There's no shot. Daniel Jones is probably not going to look good this year. But I don't think that's his fault. I think he's being let down at this point institutionally. And actually, he's a better player than people are giving him credit for.
You know what would be every year? I say this every single year. And then at the end of the year, I'm like, well, maybe I was off a little bit. Most teams, like the last few years, it feels like 28, 29, 30 teams are happy with their starter.
Yeah.
They're good enough with their starter. It's either a guy who's established, a guy who's good enough, or a guy who just got drafted and they're, still waiting and seeing. I think we're there again this year, right? I mean, the Giants are probably happy with Daniel Jones. The Dolphins, we don't really know. I mean, they're still figuring out Tua. The Panthers, are they happy with Sam Darnold? I mean, they invested in him for 2 years, so they must be, somewhat confident in him. At the end of the year, how many teams are confident? That would be a good show to predict. At the end of the year, which of these teams are like, man, I really need that Spencer Rattler in the draft? Like, which teams are looking for a quarterback? Because other than a team like Washington, who has a very clear bridge quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick, is there anyone else on the list where it's like obvious? Or, the Saints, we don't really know what Jameis or Tamus are. We don't know what that combo is. The Broncos, we probably expect them to be looking for that long-term quarterback. Are there a lot of teams in that boat? And who's going to be there? Bears aren't there anymore. Mm-hmm. The Patriots aren't there anymore for at least another couple of years. So who's going to be in that tier, in that group? Is it the Giants? Is it the Panthers? Is it these other teams? Is it the Eagles? Unless probably going to be there unless Jalen Hurts is really good. I think that's There's probably less confidence now than there was in previous years in quarterbacks, but I think there's still like a lot of confidence around the league.
A couple more outliers I think are hilarious. There's a voter out there that thinks Deshaun Watson is a tier 3 quarterback. Now, they also said, it didn't give quotes from that guy, I don't think, but it said some who argued against Watson's inclusion in tier 1 thought the best quarterback should elevate their teams more than Watson elevated the 4-12 Texans.
They only had 4 wins.
So basically 4 wins, therefore not tier 1. Now, that's just not tier 1. I don't know what the guy who thought he was a tier 3 quarterback was, unless, maybe you can say, look, high-tier quarterbacks don't get 22 lawsuits thrown at them.
That you could say that.
You could.
I will say there's this spot where maybe things are unaccounted for and quarterbacks do elevate or not elevate their teams, and that does exist. This is what we talked about on the PFF Daily today. We broke down who's the best head coach in the NFL, and we broke down Tage's article on PFF.com, and it was a lot of the coaches with the best quarterbacks seem to rise to the top, and it's like, all right, so there probably is something about great quarterbacks that over time does elevate teams. But I think Watson's year was just such an outlier.
Yeah, I don't think you can do it over the course of one season and say the dude won 4 games, ergo he doesn't elevate the level of competition. For example,
because the previous year he completely elevated the Texans to a playoff team.
Right, and right off the top of your head, you can think of multiple games where Watson actually did his job and somebody else screwed it up, right? Watson threw a game-winning touchdown pass to his slot receiver, whose name's escaped me at the moment, who then fumbled it, right?
Kiki?
Yeah.
Cutie.
Like, dig route, Cutie, hit him, touchdown, wins the game, only Cutie fumbled it, and they then don't win, right? Like, that's a win that Deshaun Watson should have credited back to him that you're not giving him. You're just looking at, 4 wins. Why could he couldn't elevate the people? We can't make him secure the ball after he puts it in his hand. The guy, he doesn't have the power of telekinesis. He can't, mind meld with Kiki Cutie and say, all right, now I've delivered you the ball. For the love of God, don't drop it over the line.
Got to elevate that team. So, yeah, I mean, there's what I would say is Watson has been the other way and actually done a good job of elevating the Texans despite the offensive line going through issues through the years, the defense falling apart over the last couple of years. And last year was such an outlier. We have not seen a quarterback great as well as Deshaun Watson and only win 4 games. It just doesn't exist in the PFF database, right? So over time, if you're going to grade 90 at quarterback, you're almost certainly going to be a playoff team. And again, the other 4 guys who graded at the same level were 1 game away from we're in the final 4.
2 more guys to mention.
Yes.
1, Sam Darnold. Only had, where is he? Sam Darnold only had 23 tier 3 votes and 27 tier 4 votes. So this group of people that believe Sam Darnold is actually really good and the Jets just Adam Gazed him and he had never had a shot, including, by the way, it seems the Panthers, evidently were not polled in this straw poll or don't exist. Like, the talk is out there and it's lip service, but they don't actually believe that because apparently of 50 voters, not one of them believes that Darnold is a tier 2 caliber quarterback.
I still want to get Dan Orlovsky on here to discuss this because if I would love to see what his rankings looked like. Because Dan generally skews positive, right? And you get a lot of analysis where, I still believe in Sam Darnold. I still believe in Carson Wentz as a top 7 quarterback. I think a guy like Dan is the guy who thinks that there's 28 legit quarterbacks. And a couple of them are a little bit better, but everyone's good. But I don't, and then I assumed, I always make that joke, somebody in the league agrees with him, and I'm not seeing a ton of that, whether it's in Carson Wentz or in Darnold.
It doesn't appear to be there, according to this poll. Now, it's only 50 guys, and who knows which 50 they interviewed, but, not the people that believe that, evidently. And then the other one that I think is kind of interesting, Joe Burrow.
I wanted to talk about him too. 27
tier 2 votes, 17 tier 3 votes, and 6 haters that have him in tier 4. Burrow right now,
won 2 games.
Yeah, Burrow right now coming back off the knee injury. Obviously, it's training camp season. Everybody's getting hype. Burrow's one of those people that's getting a lot of it as of right now. The Burrow-Jamar Chase connection in particular is already looking fantastic in training camp. Right now, the winners of training camp, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb. Every highlight you see is CeeDee Lamb. There's probably 1 or 2 others, but those are like the front runners. Losers, Kelvin Benjamin. By the way, did you see Kelvin Benjamin said he played receiver at 268?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
That got me
encouraging
thinking,
for a guy like me.
I
If
wonder
could get
who
back down to 268.
I wonder like what the heaviest playing weight for a wide receiver ever has been.
Ali Villanueva at Army.
Not Army, NFL, Steve.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about the big leagues. We don't mess with that Army stuff. But like genuine wide receiver, 268's got to be up there. That's got to be amongst the heaviest players that's ever attempted to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy. That story about him stealing food or whatever, though, that was fake.
Yeah, yeah. But the actual story is, so he got cut.
Reunite
that
him with
was real.
Jameis.
Yeah, that part was real. The Giants want him to weigh 251 as a tight end, and he was like, "Dude, I played wide receiver at 268. Like, what are you doing?" So they like sent, you leave for the summer break or whatever, and they're like, "Here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to be. All those things." So they were like, "Go away, come back, 251 to play tight end," and he was 265 when he left, and came back at 268, having put on muscle. And they were like, what are you doing? Like, you were instructed to lose 15 pounds and you came back 3 pounds heavier. Now, his point was, look, I played wide receiver at 268. How do you want me to be a lighter tight end than I was a wide receiver? And it's muscle. And, and they were just like, look, no, get out of here.
As a former player, I used to think that stuff was ridiculous, right? Like, the team, like, it's my career. Let me do what I want. But if you're at the point in Kelvin Benjamin's career,
yes,
if you want to play when they say 251, like, be 251 and
also like
take that chance.
If that was your argument, like, number one, I think you can make a fairly strong case that Kelvin Benjamin didn't always carry the best weight in his NFL career, right? So let's say for a minute that you could have lost some of the 268 and still been a lean, mean fighting machine. Number two, if you had that problem with the instructions, talk to them at the time, right? It's like, hey, here's your marching orders for the offseason, come back at 251. That's when you say, dude, I was playing wide receiver at 268. I can't get to 251. Like, let's talk about this. And then, like, hammer out an agreement and come back at whatever. Like, maybe they'll up it by 10 pounds. But you can't, like, go away with instructions to be 251, come back at 268, and think there are going to be no repercussions.
The thing is, too, if you're Kelvin Benjamin, you look at the depth chart that the Giants have at tight end. It's like, well, Evan Ingram, they signed Kyle Rudolph. Caden Smith is still, pretty young. And Levine Toilolo. Don't make me say this again. Toilolo.
There you go. Got it.
Jeez, man. I mean, he's not better than any of those guys right now. And your only chance is to have, like, Logan Thomas had a position switch and he kind of, figured it out and, helped his career. Your only chance if you're Kelvin Benjamin is this late career position switch where you kind of figure it out. And it, maybe you don't become Darren Waller, but you have to be, for him to make the roster, he's got to be better than Caden Smith and Kyle Rudolph. And he has to have the Giants believe that he's better than those guys. So you kind of have to play their game in that respect if you're playing for that team. Now, I would call the Jaguars and say, well, that tight end depth chart, I could play over there. Maybe Urban will let me play at 270. Plus, Urban's going to be like, well, I remember him from Florida State, so get him down here.
Yeah. He killed us at Florida State that one time. Yeah.
So let's get him down here.
Not the best week anyway for Kelvin. That's all I'm saying.
That's funny.
Even if he wasn't stealing food from the facility.
So Burrow, just to wrap that up, he was 14th on this list,
which is probably fair. I'm just interested by it's like I think this method spits out the right result.
Do this
overall.
one for me. The last three number one overall picks before this year: Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray,
yes,
Joe Burrow,
yes.
Kyler's 12.
Don't ask me which guy I want.
Kyler's 12. Burrow's 14. But Baker's what? 17.
Yeah,
they're pretty close. Did they get that right? Is that order of those recent? We still need to know a little bit more about those guys. Is that one right?
You said Kyler was first, then Burrow, then Baker.
Kyler 12, Burrow 14, Baker 17.
Maybe. I think talent-wise, again, like if I get the 33rd team, I'm gonna have to get the trademarks off the 33rd team if we're setting up the franchise. But if I'm getting an expansion franchise, I don't know what it's a random group of guys for supporting cast. I don't know what the coach is going to be. I don't know what the system is. I don't know how good the line, the receivers, et cetera, et cetera. You're just plugging a quarterback into that mess. I probably want Kyler Murray of the three. I think Burrow has a ceiling that's comparable. I think Baker might need a bit more help than those guys. That being said, if I'm projecting what 2021 is going to look like for the three, I think Baker Mayfield has the best year.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, it might not be close. Like, Baker Mayfield might comfortably have the best year because that environment he's in now is phenomenal.
Yeah,
and
I think
he isn't a product of the environment, but he's certainly capable of taking advantage of it.
I think for me to get back on the Baker train, so to speak, I need him to have a tier 2 quarterback type of season, which is
within a tier 1 situation.
Within a tier 1 situation, which is that's Matt Ryan, who had an MVP caliber.
2016 Ryan.
It's play like Matt Ryan. It's play like Big Ben for much of his career. Play like Russell, as good as Russell Wilson is right now. He's been a tier 2 quarterback for the majority of his career, I'd say. I think Baker has that in him.
Yeah.
I still need to see that. I think Burrow can definitely be a tier 2 quarterback. I think Murray's the one I might have the most question marks about. But I think that the rushing ability, having 600 to 800 yards on the ground every year, just offsets.
And that's why if I'm picking
his inability to throw the ball over the middle of the field, which is just a major concern for me right now.
Yeah, and it's why if I'm picking one in a neutral situation that I have no idea what it looks like, that's what I want to start with. Murray's really interesting because this is a make or break season for him, I guess. But it's also he doesn't have a settled situation in terms of Cliff Kingsbury still trying to figure out what that offense needs to look like. That's evolving. That's moving as Kingsbury figures out what the NFL is all about and how his system should attack it. And also not just adjusting his system to the NFL, but he has to adjust it to Kyler Murray as well. So we look at this and it's like Kyler Murray's got to show it now. But you're like, is that offense even capable of doing it yet? Like this idea of we play left wide receiver with Nuke Hopkins 99% of the snaps. We don't move him around because we like the tempo it lets us do. Like, why? That's not helping. Like if you look, the Cardinals ran the second fastest tempo essentially of any team in the NFL last year. A tenth of a second on average on the play clock behind the Falcons. But their EPA per play on those pass plays, on the fast plays, wasn't good. So you're like, well, the idea of we're going to sacrifice the built-in advantage that moving a receiver around gives us in order to play tempo, to tire out the defense and to get them off balance and to make them a step slow, it isn't working. Or if it is, it's taking you from a terrible...
Or showing up later. So that's the tough part to quantify. It's showing up later in the game. So it really is a big part of the spread offense. Gus Malzahn, when he was at Auburn and all that stuff, a big part of it was like not even we want to run a ton of successful plays. It really was. We just want to run a ton of plays because we believe in the fourth quarter. So we'd have to, I think, to really study that, studying like fourth quarter EPA and different things like that would be the way to do it. And then and I'm guessing that's going to be noisy and you're not going to find anything. So your point is probably right, which is maybe take your time, use some of the tactics that have been shown to create more productive plays.
Right. At this point, there's very little evidence that tempo tactic is as effective in the NFL as it certainly is in college, right?
Let me just say this: it's a pivotal year for a lot of guys. Going back to our friend Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly has a good track record of things like getting an incredible year out of Nick Foles, got a career year out of Mark Sanchez, 2013 with the Eagles did some incredible things, but he never adjusted. And when he didn't adjust and got personnel power and there were some not so good moves in there, Chip Kelly was gone. There's a lot of coaches that have to adjust. You've mentioned the McVay thing for a while, right? Sean McVay still has some adjusting to do. Cliff Kingsbury certainly has some adjusting to do. It's really a big year, I think, for some coaches in that boat who have to continue to be able to adjust to the league.
I mean,
and they've had some early success.
And Kingsbury has done a good job of doing that. Like the Cardinals last year, the average NFL team last year ran something like 29 plays in 10 personnel. That one back, 0 tight ends, 4 wide receivers, empty set stuff, the air raid concepts that we thought were going to be like the staple of this offense. So the average NFL team ran something like 28, 29 of those plays in the season. The Cardinals were over 150 after 4 weeks. Yeah. Now, they finished at like 260, so they massively dialed it back over the remainder of the season, which is the point. Like he's already seen some things within this offense that clearly don't function at the NFL level, right? He started off and he's like, we're going to run a ton of 10 personnel. We're going to get them off balance the same way we did in college. And NFL defenses are just better than that. And it doesn't work. So we went, okay, let's change. Let's dial it back. They still ran the most 10 personnel of anybody in the NFL, but it wasn't, where it was to start the season. So he's already shown that like he is willing and able to make significant adjustments to this offense. I think another one that he has to make is moving around receivers and accepting this is like the Aaron Rodgers stuff, motion, bunch formations, play action. There are 3 or 4 of these things that every offense in the NFL needs to tick because they're just cheat codes. They're just advantages that if you're not making use of, you're just leaving meat on the bone. You're leaving extra plays on the table.
I think Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals should be tapping into Max Williams at tight end a little bit more. I think Max Williams is a very good run blocking tight end. He's a good receiver too. Only had 9 targets last year on 108 receiving snaps. I mean, that's the other thing is playing to your personnel, and it's not bringing a system to the NFL. It's putting the personnel into your system and maximizing them. And if Kingsbury can do that with Rondale Moore, tap into Max Williams a little bit more, who knows what they'll get from A.J. Green, but you still have a Christian Kirk, you still have an Andy Isabella. It's a lot of different skill sets. It's that basketball team mentality. He has them to tap into. And of course, DeAndre Hopkins being one of the best in the NFL. So I think the pieces are there. So it is. I think it's a big year for Kingsbury.
So getting back to Joe Burrow, I wanted to ask, so the conversation up until now has been like, will he come back healthy from that knee injury and look like the same guy? Now, because of all the hype and what's being reported in training camp when nobody's hitting and there's no pads and blah, 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 like how good can the Bengals be? If Joe Burrow comes back and is closer to the prospect we thought he would be than the guy we saw as a rookie who was good, but not great, and there was some questions about, a few parts of his game, if he comes back and looks more like what we expected to see from Joe Burrow, how good can the Bengals be next year?
I'm still a little worried about the defensive side of the ball. And we're in that boat too. We spent the whole offseason just talking about their offensive line and just debating, well, they need a receiver, which they didn't technically need, but they did, right? Mm-hmm. You want to be 3 deep. We like that. And their offensive line. Their defense, still, it's Trey Waynes and Chidobe Awuzie in the secondary. The Awuzie move I liked, and Mike Hilton was a nice addition there. The linebackers haven't been good for years. And they just invested heavily on Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson on the defensive line at edge. They're good players. It's a pretty heavy investment for guys that I think are good, not great. So I think the defense has some question marks. Yeah. But I think the Bengals can be really good. 'Cause I would say Burrow can play like a tier 2 quarterback, which immediately makes you a potential 8 to 10 win team.
I'm now, because of what we saw from Josh Allen, I'm now really intrigued by quarterbacks that just sucked passing deep for a year.
Now, listen, this was the argument. This was one of the things I clung to in my Sam Darnold analysis. Sam Darnold at USC was excellent. Short, intermediate, accuracy was good, but grading was good. Intermediate stuff was incredible, and it was like his deep ball is just off. He doesn't have great touch, and he misses and this and that. And I was like, well, when you get the right receivers, you have a few more open throws. The same arguments are always made, and that never really happened for Sam Darnold. It did happen for Josh Allen.
2 points, though, that I would make. One is there's a difference between college and the NFL, obviously, and 2, Burrow has shown it before. Like, we've seen Burrow with a deep ball.
I looked up. I was like, hey, that's me.
Like, we've seen Joe Burrow be extremely accurate on deep passes. It's not like that isn't there. It just wasn't there as a rookie. So last year, in terms of PFF grade on everything except the deep ball, right? Here's a list of quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Joe Burrow. Ahead of Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, Tannehill, blah, blah. So really, Burrow's deep ball was bad. Make no bones about it. It was
horrendous last year.
Really bad, but Allen was the same thing the year before, right? Actually a really good, really well-graded quarterback on everything other than deep ball. Deep ball was, I think, the worst in the NFL. Josh Allen in 2019.
Our conversation last year at this time.
If he finds a deep ball.
But you were like laughing at him too at how bad some of his throws were.
They were comical.
They were landing out of bounds. It was off. It was
ridiculous.
Terrible. Yes.
But we were saying if he finds a deep ball, there is a big step to be made immediately. Now, we didn't anticipate the step he made, but like I'm now in, because that happened, because the precedent is there, I'm now really interested by the idea that Joe Burrow in year 2 with Jamar Chase there now has the capacity to take a big leap.
And part of deep ball success is a little dependent on the receivers.
Sure.
I mean, the actual like results definitely depend heavily on the receivers, but even just throwing the ball accurately. You have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins now as downfield threats. Let's also not forget, Burrow was thrown to A.J. Green, who had the second low. I mean, he was N'Keal Harry-esque at getting open last year.
He was
N'Keal Harry, the guy that he can't find a place to play because he can't get open. And that's how A.J. Green played,
A.J. Green was hurting Joe Burrow last season. It sounds ridiculous. And before the year, we were saying, hey, keep A.J. Green around because it'll help Burrow.
Yeah.
Like, he was genuinely hindering Joe Burrow last season because he was so bad at getting separation. So every target you sent his way was effectively a bad decision.
We have to get down to training camp and go see this hype. Can we get down? Can we get over there? Bengals, are you listening? Let us into training camp so we can see Joe.
Yeah. But
Jamar.
I'm now really fascinated by this idea of, hey, if Burrow takes a big step forward, because look, Joe Burrow, okay, it was a limited sample size, but Burrow the prospect, Burrow the draft quarterback was as good as we've ever seen. And that's happened, like this has been, the bar is being moved, sequentially higher, like the Olympics, where it just keeps getting up. Like Baker was the best we'd ever seen. And then Kyler Murray's season rivaled anything we saw from Baker. And then Joe Burrow was another step higher again. So it has been sort of getting edged up over the last few years. But that year of Burrow at LSU was phenomenal.
It was incredible. He did not have one bad game. Did it all in the SEC. Even though defense is getting worse in the SEC, it's still not at that Big 12 level.
There wasn't that question mark.
Right. He was just phenomenal. And Burrow did not have a great offensive line at LSU. Like Baker had pristine offensive line, great play caller, great playmakers, everything. Burrow definitely had great playmakers and Joe Brady as a play caller, but he was still running for his life a little bit at LSU as well. All right, man. Anything else you want to touch on here, minor league, Steve?
Will Fuller's hurt already. It's football season once again. Will Fuller dealing with some stuff.
I would take that chance every time.
Yeah. It's a shame. I mean, he's one of those players. You think about this all the time, that like there are certain players in the NFL that you wish you could just, ding the magic wand and they wouldn't get hurt anymore. Tyler Eifert's of the world, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Will Fuller's rapidly getting himself into that category, that if you could just make sure Will Fuller didn't get hurt every year, you'd be in business.
Kelly says, it looks like I'm looking at a skinny version of you.
Yeah.
When I sent her the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm impressed that you got the look this close.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, all credit goes to the good people at the Jock Wig Company who had it nailed. I thought I was going to have some...
Rename it Steve's Hair.
I thought I was going to have to get like, the big afro wig and then take scissors to it and try and like shoehorn that into something approaching your hair. But they actually had one. They had a Steve haircut.
We should do dueling fros. You get the fro wig, and I'll wear my fro wig, and we'll just have a double fro show at some point as well.
Maybe not.
I do kind of wish he had I like the chest hair under the jersey look. That's Greg Maddox style. Yeah. That's that's a baller look. But I the turtleneck though. I was hoping to see the turtleneck.
Look, it's very hot inside under the jock wig. Yeah. It's a warm place to be. I wasn't adding a turtleneck.
And you went with the lighter jacket, the Big League Giants jacket, instead of the Big League Mariners jacket that I gave you.
Right.
The Mariners one is very, very cozy.
Yeah.
Very cozy.
I don't want that. I mean, it's
when you're playing up in Tacoma, Washington.
Yeah, it's chilly.
And it's raining.
SeaTac.
Every single night. We just sat out in the bullpen in the rain. You need the heavy turtleneck, heavy jacket.
Have you seen the cart that the Olympics are using, the bullpen cart?
No,
it's
that's old school baseball there,
right?
Yeah.
Well, it looks like it's a regular, almost like the injury cart, except on the back where the platform is for the player. It's like a giant baseball glove as a seat. So the guy sits on the thing, and they drag him out.
That's old school. That's what they do in
Ball's
Japan.
Gone. My bad.
I almost played in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
You just dropped the ball. That's not good.
No. Fumble. Yeah, that's not ideal. I just gave up a run.
Let's go take some batting practice. You look like you're ready for it.
Oh, I could.
Well, thanks to minor league Sam, minor league Steve for being here. Skinny Steve. So we'll be back. We'll have Monday. When are we going to go to 3 shows during the season?
Yeah.
Is that the plan?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll start that week 1?
Probably.
So those are some of the things coming up. Week 1, we'll be going 3 shows a week. I think that middle show, we've gotten a lot of good feedback on. The people love other PFF guests.
Yeah.
The people love having guys like Eric Eager on, Brad Spielberger, whoever it might be.
Thank you, by the way, to everybody
that
that filled in that survey. They are always very helpful, and we got hundreds of responses. So
the survey was, yes, very helpful. We're going to implement some of the feedback, not all of it. There was a lot of more minor league baseball story feedback. I will take.
This is like all the minor league baseball, anything you need for the next several weeks. Go and donate, by the way. If you haven't already, I'm not dressing up like this for nothing. We've already raised more than our goal, but there'll still be time. So head to PFF_Sam. It's my pinned tweet. Go donate a few bucks for the kids.
We'll get to our next charity event here.
Yeah. The next one we did the men. This is the kids. It's women's charity time.
I have a women's drug addiction recovery charity that we could use.
Okay.
So I think let me just double check that, make sure we do that, and that'll be the next one, and we'll figure out what goofy thing Steve's going to do.
Yeah.
Maybe it will be Josh Allen jerseys. We'll see what happens.
Can't believe I have this facial hair now.
Looks good, man.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
By Monday, training camp's in full swing.
Yeah.
We got to start our team previews, right?
Yeah, we're going to get going.
We'll get to some team previews. We got all sorts of great stuff coming up. Also, don't forget to get to PFF.com. You're probably doing your fantasy drafts right around now over these next couple weeks. I promise you won't find anything better than the fantasy tools over at PFF.com. I promise.
Okay.
Win like us.
I believe you.
Any last words, Minor League Steve? I want to cherish this. Let's keep this show going.
What would Minor League Steve say? Do you have a catchphrase, like slogan?
I don't want to say. So, listen.
Now you have to.
I used to do a little self-talk.
This is like in the UFC, there's this women's fighter called Rose Namajunas who, like, literally 5 seconds before the fight starts, the dude's like giving it the on the microphone, and she's over there going, just yelling at herself, I'm the best. And then, like, ding, ding.
You think that's
wins
weird?
Championship. Were you doing that? Was that Minor League Steve?
Yeah, there were points in my career, like sometimes like day games, you'd be dragging a little bit. Just think about it. You play night games every day. You're up late. And so day game, it's almost like playing when you're used to like waking up and all that stuff. Just everything's off. So sometimes you felt tired or whatever. So you have to get up for your performance.
Right.
And I worked like 15 minutes a week. You pitch like one inning here, one inning there. You're only out there for like 15, 20 minutes in a given week of actual work.
Yeah.
So I would throw my last warm-up pitch, and then I would yell into my glove. I'd say, "Feel great."
Okay.
Dominate.
Right.
And and I would kind of yell it a little bit.
Yeah.
And so the catcher throws the ball to second base to start the inning, and then they get the ball back to you. And my second baseman used to always think that I was yelling at them. They'd be like, "What'd I do?" So I'd yell into my glove, and that was my way of just kind of getting all jacked up for the inning.
We need, the social graphics that we do on Twitter? We need like a quote graphic, right? That's Minor League Sam. This shot, right? The camera here, and then it's the quote graphic that simply says, I work like 15 minutes a week. Dash PFF Steve.
I only do about 15 minutes of actual work.
Somebody make that happen. I need a picture of me in this idiot getup, and I need the quote from @PFF_Steve.
Relief pitcher
I work
Steve.
like 15 minutes a week. Somebody make that happen.
You only pitch 3 or 4 innings. They're about 4 or 5 minutes apiece. Unless you get lit up, it might be more 10-minute inning. If you're out there for like a 30, sometimes you get like a 30-minute inning.
I was going to say, what's the longest
lit?
you've ever been just like having people ding the ball over your head?
Let me tell you the Colorado Springs story really quick. I may have told it already. But the thin air of Colorado
of course, nightmare.
Is so tough. It really is tough to breathe. I ran a few sprints before the game, and I was like, man, you run like 10 sprints as like your workout for the day.
You don't seem like you don't have the best endurance at the best of times, let alone at altitude.
This was bad. I ran 3 sprints before the game. I couldn't even catch my breath, right? So then I had to, get into the game. And this is where I used to joke. The starting pitchers used to get Colorado Springs-itis.
Right.
They'd be like, I got the 4-day shoulder bug here. I got to miss a start. Because
I'll be okay 2 days from now when we're not here.
Right. You get lit up there. So anyway, I had to hit in this one particular outing. So I made a pact with myself as a kid. I said, I'm going to play the game hard. I'm going to run hard to first base. I'm never going to jog.
Okay.
So I actually made contact,
All right.
AAA game, ground ball to short, and I sprint to first base. I have no shot of beating it out, but I sprinted. I made the second out of the inning. I go back to the dugout, and I am huffing and puffing. I am completely out of breath. And then the guy gets out, third out, and I got to go out to pitch. And I am still out of breath. So first pitch of the inning, guy pops it up. I'm like, oh, this is great. One pitch, one out. First baseman, foul territory, drops it. So should have been one out. That guy gets on base. Long story short, I end up giving up 8 runs. I mean, I am still trying to catch my breath. I'm getting lit up. The first baseman dropped it. The right fielder lost the ball in the lights. And it just goes by him for like a triple. And I'm still trying to catch my breath out here. And I go from like, I'm going to sneak through this inning to like 8 runs later. Not all earned, some unearned runs. So, you know how that unearned runs, they don't blame you. They like, you gave up the run, but it was really the defense's fault.
Right. Yeah.
Like 7 of them were like unearned out of the 8. So it saved my ERA. But I'll never forget just playing in the thin air of Colorado Springs, and you're hoping for every little break to go your way, and they all went the other way, and I got lit up. It was bad. So I didn't want. Nobody wants to pitch in Colorado Springs for a reason. Crazy stuff happens, and when you give up a home run, it's like it goes off like into like outer space because like the clouds are like right there. It just give up home runs into the clouds. So the 243.
That's unfortunate.
So if you're a pitcher, just jog.
Yeah,
just
don't
jog.
run, don't sprint.
You don't have to play the game hard.
No. You don't have to play.
We're in Cincinnati. Pete Rose would never do that.
That's another quote tweet.
Yeah,
you don't have to play the game hard.
If you're going to be out,
PFF,
you just jog it out. Pete Rose would never let you do that.
We could do like a whole series of inspirational those black motivational quote posters. Just PFF Steve. I only work 15 minutes a week, and then you don't have to play the game hard. We can have a whole series of them.
You don't. Playing the game hard is overrated. Just get guys out. That's your job as a pitcher. You don't have to run down the first base.
No.
Learned it the hard way. I still hit better in AAA than Tim Tebow, though. So
that's cold.
Well, it's been a great show. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks to everybody for dealing with the minor league stories. But minor league Steve over here looks great. It's all because of what you guys did with the charity drive. We'll do more of that. We appreciate all the interaction from our listeners. Don't forget the PFF Daily is back as well, and I will still be giving away. PFF Edge to someone on the next show that sends a screenshot of a subscription to the PFF NFL Podcast and the PFF NFL Daily.
Okay.
All right. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. See you Monday. Wave minor league, Steve.